think I have audio here. So you should all be able to hear me unless I am mistaken. Oh, I'm really sorry. I sent it last night like as honestly early as I could. I sent it like I think it was like 2 in the morning when I sent it because I was doing some other work. So I really wanted people to not have to trek over to Tory if they didn't have to. I'm sorry you had to walk all the way to Tory. I'm really sorry. I tried to send the notice like last night so people would get it first thing in the morning because I figured it is really stinking cold out. Okay. I'm trusting you can all hear me. Just maybe someone give me a quick yes, we can hear you, so I know I'm not talking into the void, either in the YouTube chat or on Slido, please. I guess I could put. Yeah, okay, perfect, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, great, wonderful. I'm so happy. Again, I'm sorry if you didn't get the message in time and you ended up coming to campus anyway. As I woke up in the middle of the night last night and couldn't get back to sleep, I'm like, this is dumb. Like, I should just allow people to not come to campus. So, okay. Perfecto. All right. Let's clear this off. That's so weird. Gmail's notifications haven't worked on your phone for years. Huh. Must be I don't know. Okay. All right. So basically today, pretty simple and straightforward. I'm actually just gonna move my webcam since my face is over here. Pretty simple and straightforward kind of day. Basically, we are doing some pre-exam review, right? So what I'm going to start off with is Q&A, right? So if you have any questions you want to ask me, fire them off into the chat or into Slido, and I will do my best to answer them. And then I've got a few like the short answer questions that I gave you as practice questions. I'm just going to go through them and sort of talk through how I would like you to answer them, right? And sort of where the grades will be distributed to give you an idea kind of how I'll be marking them on the midterm. So, yeah, I mean, just a very quick reminder for all of you that the midterm is on Wednesday. Come hell or high water, it'll be in person. You have to come down to the room. I know it's written on Canvas, but it will be password locked. So in order to get that password, you're going to have to come down to the room in Tory to write the exam, and I'll have a proctor working with me to kind of, invigilate the exam. Before you leave that day, you're going to have to check out, right, so we can make sure that you actually submitted the exam and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, anyway, easy. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think you'll have too much trouble with it at the end of the day. Okay, so is there a cutoff for the midterm? Yeah, so the cutoff was on Friday, right? So all of the globalization stuff that we went through is all available on the midterm. So yeah, there's going to be questions on each of the, I guess, 3 units that we've done so far, right? We did kind of history. We did history. We did concepts and theories, and then we did globalization. So that is the cutoff. Okay, if you are writing remotely, the password will be available to you through SEM. So basically, when you go through and write using SEM, the password will be there for you. It gives me an area where I can submit put the password into SEM, and then you can go from there. So only those people who are actually registered for accommodations will actually be able to use the SEM. Other than that, you won't be able to use it. But yeah, if you have accommodations, the password will be there for you. Okay, let's I'm gonna move my good mouse over here rather than using the trackpad. Sorry, I keep losing my mouse because I have 3 computer monitors going at the moment. Okay, I think I answered this. I'm guessing you have to remember the names of everyone in the slides and who did what. So I won't be I won't test. Okay, sorry, let me slow my brain down. I'm not going to test on names, right? Like, I really don't believe in testing ticky-tack kind of stuff, like which person said this. So I would say you're probably best not to worry too much about names when it comes to things like the Austrian economist, right? Like, I don't think that is necessarily the place where I want you kind of remembering concepts. So if I were to, give you advice, my advice would not be, sorry, I've lost my mouse again. I'm having issues with, there it is, okay. I wouldn't say go, memorize all the names. Like, I don't care if you, remember, for example, like who von Mises is, or anything specific about, von Hayek. Remember the concepts, right? So for Austrian economics, I'm much more interested in you remembering things like their critique of the labor theory of value, their critique of this idea of profit as theft, and their sort of general conception of how economics works at the end of the day. So that's kind of what I am more concerned with than the names, right? Okay. Yeah, you don't have to remember all the Austrian economists. Oh, yeah, okay, so on the practice materials, what was the economic system that emerged in the 1500s? And yeah, it should be mercantilism. I goofed when I entered that one into Canvas. It is now fixed, so, any further attempts, you'll see the correct one. Okay, I cleared that. For SEM, do you need a web camera? Yes, I'll be sending an email out about that today, but I'll quickly kind of summarize for it. So for SEM, you need basically 3 things. So it has to be on a PC or a Mac. It can't be on a tablet, because SEM does not work on iPads. I think they are working on a new version of SEM that would, but so far as I know, it is still in the works. Because I can see SEM 2.0 on Canvas, but it says do not use. So I'm assuming they're working on something that would work a little bit better. But so far, I don't have access to it, so I think that would not be the way to go. So you need a PC or a Mac. You need a browser that's Chromium. So Chromium, Chromium basically, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Brave, Opera are all Chromium-based browsers. So you need a Chromium-based browser. So basically don't use Firefox and don't use Safari. Neither of those ones will work. They're going to kick up an error for you. What I'm also going to set up today, and I apologize that it isn't done already, is a test setup, and basically it'll link into the practice exam. So the practice quiz that you can do, it'll link into there, but it'll give you a chance to test out your setup to make sure everything is working beforehand, right? So, my goal for my sort of next time slot here, which is 11 till 2 o'clock, is basically to get that all set up for you, right? Get that set up, get the exam, everything finalized, get all the accommodations put in, get emails sent out to the accommodations people, and all of that. So once I get that done, you should be able to test your setup, and yeah, it should be no problem. But yeah, you do need a webcam, you do need a microphone, and you don't need it during the exam necessarily, but to set up SEM, you'll need that. And it has to be a laptop, not a Chromebook, a PC or a Mac, running a Chromium-based browser. So again, Chrome, Edge, Brave, or Opera, I think are the big options there. And I keep losing my mouse cursor, so I don't know where it is. I guess I can probably, okay. So for sure to answer questions, I assume we're going to be typing in Canvas, so you need to bring laptops to Tori. Yes, that would be preferable, right? Or a iPad with a keyboard attached. If you think you can type on an iPad or a phone quickly enough, you're welcome to use that too. But probably, yeah, keyboard is recommended. If we don't need accommodations, do you need a laptop and a webcam? No, so you can write on whatever device you want. There are short answer questions, so you just have to be able to type. They're not long, right? You don't have to write the super longest answers in the world, so you don't need a laptop and a webcam. You can use a tablet or a phone, right? I'm keeping an eye on you in class. Okay. For SEM, okay, I answered that one. Is the midterm similar to the practice questions? Yeah, I would say so. I will say the practice questions, I've tried to make them roughly similar, but they are questions that I was like, yeah, I don't love this question. So I developed them, and then I'm like, well, it's an okay question. It's not maybe a great question. So I use that for the practice exam. So those should be fairly similar, but I think the exam questions are a little bit better. Like the wording is better. Okay. Just clear that off. Okay. How important are exact dates and years? I'm not going to ask you for exact dates and years, right? And probably historical periods, ranges. I might give you the dates and then ask you, significance to a specific phenomenon. But I'm not going to ask you in what year did Canada's industrialization begin? Was it 1857, 1854, 1867, 1872? Right, I won't ask those kinds of questions. I don't like them, and I don't think they're fair questions. Should we also expect short answer questions to be similar to the practice midterm? Yeah, I think they'll be substantially similar. They're pretty straightforward, and obviously I tried to give you topics that were... Those are probably even more similar, let's say, than the multiple choice ones where there's a little bit more variance. Okay, which period marks the beginning of industrial capitalism? So mercantile capitalism marks a particular period where you get the accumulation of capital that's then later used to invest in the factories, right? So the rise of mercantile capitalism sort of sets the stage for industrial capitalism, which will then take hold a little bit later. Hopefully that makes sense. SEM. So, okay. SEM is Smart Exam Monitor. Basically, it's a remote proctoring tool that's used for those people who are writing with accommodations, right? Because they get more time. Sometimes they need a quiet space or whatever it happens to be. So you don't have to worry about it unless you have accommodations. And yeah, it's really straightforward. It's built into, you don't need extra software or anything, which is why I use it instead of ExamLog, because ExamLog fails half the time. Okay, so I think I cleared that. Oop, didn't mean to. Okay, so do you expect the short answers to be similar? Yes, I think so. I said that. I can answer that after we get through exam questions. I answered you. Okay. What do I think is the best way to study? Okay. I guess I can answer that. For me, I would condense, go through your notes. Hopefully you've taken notes as we've gone through the lectures, right? You can review lecture slides, review the notes you were making when when you were listening to me talk. Anything that's unclear, you can go back to the lectures because they're all online. You can go back and watch them again and be like, hey, I wonder what he meant. I didn't really understand. If you have any questions, you can send me emails. If you have the textbook, you can kind of dig into the textbook a little bit. Yeah, I think if you do all of that, you'll be well prepared. Yeah, so feudalism is before the 1500s. Feudalism is that economic system of the medieval period, right? So you're correct. Like I said, I miskeyed a question about feudalism. Do I know if there's an electrical outlet in the classroom that you can use? I am not sure. I know that the plan is for all of those seating areas to have electricity in them. I don't know if it is hooked up yet. Okay, so you are there right now. There are no electrical outlets. Yeah, so that's definitely a challenge. I will say, like, if you are, for whatever reason, you have no device that can be used. You're in a situation where you're like, I don't have a laptop, I don't have a tablet that I can use, or whatever. Do shoot me an email. Though I don't love doing it, I can print out a single copy of the exam. So if you're needing like a paper copy and you would prefer that, I can do a small run of paper copies just on the printer in my office. And I can do that for you and bring you in a Scantron. We can go low tech here, people, if we absolutely have to. I don't like it, but there are outlets under the armrest that work. Cool. Very cool. Okay. Okay, so I think I've cleared this. Okay, can I go over the key points of Austrian economics? Okay, so Austrian economics, like, to put it very, very simply, what do I think you should know about Austrian economics? So, Austrian economics is largely a response to Marxism. And Austrian economics, fundamentally, for our purposes, is kind of interested in two major questions. One of them is sort of reacting to the labor theory of value, right? So the labor theory of value, which is this Marxian notion that basically the value of a good, right, a produced good, is roughly equal to the amount of labor that went into it, or the hours of labor that went into it, minus the cost of the raw materials, right? And so from this, the Marxists and the liberals as well, the liberal economics, draws a kind of general idea that something like profit ends up being a form of theft, right? Because you're stealing the extra value that the worker put into that product. Now, so that's the Marxist notion. Austrian economics says, no, hold on a sec, that's not really how value works. Value is established in the margins, right? So the value of a good is not, some abstract notion of how much labor went into it. It is what is someone willing to pay for it, right? So you can have a good that costs a ton, which has very little labor going into it, or a good that costs little that has a ton of labor going into it. And here, right, like, this is what's encapsulated in kind of the diamond water paradox. Diamonds are super valuable. Water is relatively cheap, right? A Marxist would say, yeah, diamonds are expensive because a lot of labor goes into getting them out of the ground, and so they're very valuable. And water, you can turn your tap on and there is water that comes out. It's very, very cheap. Now, the Austrian kind of reply to that is,
that we can imagine a scenario where water would be expensive and diamonds would be cheap, right? Where you would trade a sack of diamonds for, a gallon of water if you're dying in the desert, which suggests that the price of a good is not actually fixed, right? It's not actually how much labor goes into it, but rather what you're willing to pay for it. This is called marginalism or the marginal revolution, right? So it suggests that this labor theory of value is incorrect. The other notion that we want to take from the Austrians, right, is kind of over recompense. Because Marxist economics, especially, though again, liberal economics plays this game as well, suggests that often workers are, not fairly compensated, especially when compared to the owners, right, who get a disproportionate, owners and investors who get disproportionate amounts of reward for the capital they invest, but not even though they put in minimal labor. And again, the Austrian response to this is, from the side of the owners of the means of production, they're the ones taking all the risk, right? They're the ones putting themselves on the line to build factories, to take out loans, to purchase equipment that makes the workers productive, and they get fairly recompensed for this, and investors get fairly recompensed for essentially declining opportunity costs, right? There is a cost to opportunity. You could have used that money to buy yourself a yacht or a car or a nice meal out, but instead you chose to invest that money in a company or in the stock market or whatever, and so because you did that, you are essentially being fairly compensated for that opportunity cost, right? Like that money that you put into the stock market, you could have enjoyed a car for 10 years, with that money. But instead, you put that money into the stock market, made someone else productive, and now you get to be recompensed for that. So those are, I think, kind of the key Austrian economics points that I think would be good for you to know. And, okay. Can I go over neoliberalism versus Keynesianism? Okay, so the basic... sorry, that's an interesting question. Can I go over neoliberalism versus Keynesian models? Okay, so neoliberalism, right, basically, just think of it this way. It's a return to the basic liberal principle that the best way to run an economy is with very little state intervention, right? That we should actually be reducing the amount of state intervention, because what we got in the 1970s, was a kind of crash generated by too much government spending, inflation caused by governments just putting too much money into the system, too much interference, too much control. And so the best way for a market to run is basically for governments to take their hands off, right, and let the market regulate itself. Keynesianism is basically the idea that actually what you need is a pretty steady hand from the state to smooth out the peaks and troughs of the economy. Basically to kind of slow down, my furnace just turned off, to slow down kind of recessions by spending into the economy, right? So basically putting a bunch of cash in, putting social welfare programs in so that people don't lose everything, right? They're basically secure, you have welfare, you have EI and things like that, so that people don't lose their shirts in an economic downturn. So you kind of try to guide the market by the government spending money here and there to kind of smooth out some of the rougher parts of capitalism. That's the basic idea of Keynesianism, right? Basically, they call it, when there's a recession, they boost aggregate demand, right? So they increase demand in the economy by spending money. There's also a notion fundamentally that spending money in recessions is good for governments because they get what they otherwise would have to pay a lot more for relatively cheaper. Okay. Let me, I think I cleared that one, I hope. I think think we talked about this. The outlets worked. Yay, there are outlets under the arms rests. What concepts from units would you recommend we should go through your prayer for short answer questions? Without giving too much away, if there's a really strong contrast between two concepts, I really like writing questions about some of these contrasting ideas, right? Where I can see that you're having to put ideas together from two different parts of the course. So, like the Austrian versus Marxist stuff I like, or the, Austrian versus liberal labor theories of value. And those are things that I kind of enjoy. Writing, where, you can compare and contrast sort of different things. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay. Why study when? That one, I can't answer that one. You got to figure that one out yourself. Maybe Doug Ford will save us, or Danielle Smith. Who knows? Okay, the exam is closed book. Yes, it's closed book. Should we know the first names of the people with theories? No. The last names. Everything in academics is last names. We don't talk about people's first names. Okay, you don't understand Durkheim. Could I explain about the labor theory of value? So Durkheim doesn't really have a labor theory of value. Durkheim's whole shtick when it comes to a lot of the work stuff is more on social cohesion. So, for one, social cohesion, Durkheim says, declines once you enter a kind of modernity, right? Once you leave the kind of medieval village and move into cities, you get a decline in social cohesion. Why? Because those tight bonds that people had in villages, right, where you knew everybody and you were all dependent on each other, but you understood those links, kind of breaks down. What Durkheim suggests is that, when it's a factory and, you're producing a little gear that goes into a clock that then gets sold in a market, but you never see the whole clock, you're going to feel alienated from that society and the labor, what he calls anomie, right? You're demoored from the society. Now, he thinks this will ultimately get fixed because eventually, in order for a society to function properly, everybody sort of has to get together and kind of work together. And he thinks employers and employees eventually will kind of get together and do this. So I hope that helps. Let me just see. Okay, now I can answer the less topical ones. Kind of okay. Do I teach any courses that are heavily focused on economics? You know what the strange thing is? Increasingly, my courses are more focused on economics. Like my sociology of youth class, which was never really an economics class, increasingly I'm just bringing in more and more economics concepts. Like, I'm talking about families at the end of this week. And virtually all of it is economics now. So I don't know if I'm, deep diving on economics or I'm just learning more about it. I'm sort of constantly reading and absorbing more stuff, and it kind of strangely changes how I teach. And over time, I've gotten to be more economically focused. Well, until AI hits the singularity point and it starts to have feelings and its own thoughts, I hope not. Okay, are we cooked with these incoming U.S. tariffs? So I would say, oddly, I would say kind of generally not. I actually am somewhat optimistic when it comes to Canada. I think Canada's been stuck for a long time in a really low productivity cycle, where we've sort of been coasting on the past glories of the country and not really, doing much to move our economy forward. I think this country has for a long time sort of goosed its GDP with really high housing prices, and a lot of immigration that then raised those housing prices, rather than investing in things that would increase productivity, generating new industries, and creating a really competitive environment. And clearly the world where that was going to happen is over. So if, and this is a big if, and I have no faith that this will happen, but I have hope, if we get some politicians that have some imagination, it's a real moment, I think, to revive the Canadian economy, to do things like really reducing regulation, cutting taxes, I don't know, maybe becoming a tax haven the way Ireland is, you know, making Canada a really attractive place to invest, which could launch Canada into a new golden age. Or our politicians are all incompetent morons. They're going to twiddle their thumbs and do nothing, maybe go down to Mar-a-Lago and bend the knee and hope that Trump is friends with them, and then you know, eventually we end up getting annexed and becoming, you know, a bunch of American states or something. Either one of these scenarios, I will give a sort of, you know, I'd say probably 60% we get a decent set of politicians that have some ideas and maybe kick off a time of prosperity in Canada once we get through the rough patch. You know, I give a 40% chance to our political class is so unimaginative and atrophied that they do nothing except, you know, rage, tariff the Americans, and our economy goes to absolute garbage and we get sucked in province by province into the U.S. So I'm optimistic, but not that optimistic. Why did we get hit with tariffs? I mean, fundamentally because Donald Trump has a view of economics that thinks that free trade is bad and tariffs are good, and tariffs are a way, you know, going back to like the McKinley administration in the U.S., tariffs were a way that America built up its industry, sold things to the rest of the world behind the protective shield of tariffs. And for whatever reason, this is the theory of economics that Trump has. I think this is wrong. I think free trade has generally been good, but that's his theory. And so he's going to put up as many tariffs, and the drugs thing, I think, is just a pretext. But I could be wrong about that. Okay, what do you need to know? What concepts are important regarding the next 11? So the next 11 are just this group of 11 economies that are sort of seen as the next big economies. So what's important about them? They are relatively high growth. They have all of them really have huge population growth. So they're probably the next economies that are set to boom. So if anyone's going to be kind of the next big thing, it's probably those economies in the next 11. I would say particularly Mexico and Indonesia. Is it important to memorize the countries in BRICS Plus? I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I probably wouldn't ask you a question that has you having to list the countries in BRICS Plus. I don't see that as something I would do. Okay. No, YouTube has no questions at the moment. Okay. I'll leave this here for a sec. I got like 27 minutes, or 17 minutes? 17 minutes left where we can look at a few short answer questions, and I'll just kind of explain how I would have them for globalization, because it's the cutoff of the midterm. What are the main concepts you need to focus on? Okay, hang on, I'm locked in here, so I don't know if I can pull up another set of PowerPoint slides. Let's see if I can pull it up and move it to a different screen. Oh, of course, I had it open on my other laptop. I can maybe come back to this in a second, and I can just kind of flick through. I usually don't need notes, but I'm trying to remember everything that's in there. Okay, so what would be kind of central on globalization? I mean, so what is it, right? The global movement of goods, that's our key definition of globalization. The way it has been transformative and the sort of phases of globalization. I'm just waiting for my PowerPoint to open so I can just flick through it quickly. Should you spend much time studying the thinkers that were briefly covered in class, like Foucault, Bell, or Beck? I mean, I would say just know what they say, right? Their ideas are not super complicated in the way they're presented in the class. So have a sense of what their arguments are, right? Like I said, I don't think any of them are super complex or anything that should cause you too much trouble. Okay. There's some different ways the economy took to industrialize South Korea, Taiwan. Yeah, I think absolutely. Those are, we spent a fair bit of time on each, so I think those are all fair questions. So I think you should do that. Okay, let me just see if my globalization slides are open yet. Okay, I'm just going to pop this over two windows. And so if I'm looking sideways, I apologize. Just so I can remember what's on here. So we've got our definition, right? Yeah, the fact that a lot of it is related to the move of Western economies into service industries, and the shift of developing economies or manufacturing into developing economies. International division of labor, right? So like we saw in that Planet Money video, right? Work is done in a lot of different places. Capital flows very easily. Nation states have a tough time dealing with it. Space and time is compressed through things like airplanes and the internet. The belief that this was going to be the dominant economic system following the collapse of the Soviet Union, right? That neoliberalism was going to spread everywhere, as was liberal democracy. Have some familiarity with cultural imperialism and what it means. History of the free trade agreements, right? Definitely understand those a little bit. There will definitely be questions on those. Logicum industrialism thesis, definitely understand that, right? This idea that we assumed, going into the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, that eventually if everybody developed economically along the same model that the West did, they would all end up looking kind of like the West, right? They would become liberal democracies. Logic of industrialism thesis, or the end of history kind of thesis. So definitely, know that. Know how it differs from multiple modernities, right? This idea that the kind of other side of this end of history logic of industrialism thesis is the idea that we're all going to end up, with some shared features, what industrialization looks like, but at the end of the day, every country is going to look a little bit different. The histories for the tiger, the East Asian tigers, the BRICS, how they have kind of changed, what they look like, BRICS Plus, Next 11. I think that's it. I I covered everything there. So I did a unit that took me 3-4 hours to do in 4.5 minutes. I feel good about myself now. Could have been much briefer than I was. Okay. All right. Well, let's look at some of these practice questions, and I can just outline kind of how, in theory, you could answer some of them. Okay. So here is one of them, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get rid of myself. I'm going to delete myself. There you go. You can't see me anymore. So now it's just nothing but a clear blue or clear white screen. Okay. So Austrian economics. How would they answer the market claim or the Marxist claim that profit is theft? Ooh, I got a space heater in here. It's starting to warm up. Okay. Either that or I get spicy when I talk about Austrian economics. I don't know which one. Okay. So the pen has returned, by the way. So basically what you need to do for a question like this, and here's what I'll say, is basically you're going to get 2.5, so these are all out of 5, for showing that you understand the question. And I'll explain what that means. So, what is the question here really asking? Okay, in a sense, what you have to set up to show your understanding is this part, right? So what is the Marxist claim here? That profit is theft. So you need to outline the labor theory of value, right? According to Marxists. So why is profit theft? Because of the labor theory of value. So you're going to go through, the price of a thing is equal to the labor plus the cost of materials. Right? So, anything added to this, right, to the cost of materials, should belong to the worker, right? Because they're the ones who added their labor to an item that turned it from just a bunch of raw materials sitting around into something inherently valuable. Okay, so once you set up, what the labor theory of value is, and why. Okay, so therefore, right, when a owner profits, and they don't give the whole amount of that extra value, right, that surplus value, to the worker, they're stealing the fruits of someone's labor. Right? Because they didn't do any of the labor. They're just profiting from it because they're an evil bourgeois pig. Okay, so having outlined that, you got 2.5 if you can outline it that way. So the second part, right, is how would an Austrian answer this, right? So how would an Austrian economist answer this? Okay, so what they would say is, right, labor value is subjective. It's not objective. And the value of a product is subjective. You might make the Tesla phone or something. A smartphone. And nobody buys it. Does that mean that the labor had no value? Labor equals 0? No. Okay, so labor value is subjective. The value of a product is subjective, right? If nobody buys, the labor wasn't worth nothing. It's just that the product failed, right? So value is marginal, right? It's found in what people will pay. And owners get to profit more because they risk more. Risk more. Okay, so that's, obviously write this in complete sentences. I'm just kind of doodling this out on a slide so you have something to kind of, look at. But this is basically the two parts of the question, right? Figure out what the question is asking and frame it correctly. Answer the substantive part. So if you just answer this part, right, how would they answer it? You're missing, the basic notion of setting up how profit is theft. Oh, thank you for the subscribe. I do not monetize my YouTube channel, so your subscription is appreciated, but it is worth nothing to me. Okay. Would I say all three modules are focused on equally? I would say, okay, we spent more time on concepts and theories, so concepts and theories is going to have a little bit more, right? So we spent a long time, it's a lot of slides in there. So it's going to be weighted more. And then, globalization and the history a little bit less. So, okay. Do I think the US is going to fall as the world's leading superpower and economy? Well, it's already no longer the world's largest economy by purchasing power parity. With China's already larger. I suspect if it goes into economic protectionism, yeah, probably. It's definitely, like, the center of economic gravity is very much in Eurasia right now, and especially in East Asia. That's where the growth is coming. Africa is coming on, and if the U.S. wants to shut itself out of that by being protectionist, sure. But I think we're already in a world where the U.S. is, ahead a little bit of, say, China as a military power, but not as far ahead as they used to be. But that's, geopolitics. We can talk about that another time. Let's do some more exam prep. Okay. So, how does Durkheim view the division of labor? And how does this view compare to Marx, right? So this is a very easy two-part question, right? And the parts are way clearer than the last one. 2.5 and 2.5. Okay, so how does Durkheim view the division of labor? Okay, so necessary. He views it as necessary. But what can it lead to? It can lead to, alienation, anomie, not seeing, how your work, not seeing how your work contributes. And not seeing your connection to others, right? Okay, so that's Durkheim, right? That's my buddy Durkee. Emil. Okay, how does it compare with Marx's view? So they share a notion or share a concern about alienation. Right, so they have that in common about alienation. So that they ultimately share that. Marx is more concerned kind of with the economic questions, I guess with inequality. And Marx's notion, right, is to fight alienation, essentially you need a revolution. And Durkheim, or you can say that Marx is, focuses on the conflict in society between social classes, whereas Durkheim is more focused on, how do you fix alienation? Through cooperation. Okay. So again, I think pretty straightforward at the end of the day. How are we doing for time? 3 minutes. Okay. So I posted this one. I posted the same one twice. Okay, I think I had a third question, but I must have hit the copy paste wrong. So, hang on. Let me bring myself back. There I am. So those are two examples of the questions. I thought I had the third one, but I seem to have copy and pasted it wrong, which, unfortunately happened. Okay, so, I think that is everything. Let me just, sorry, I'm always losing my 3 screens is too many. Keep those, and I'm just going to relaunch this to see if there's any kind of final questions that anyone has. And if not, then I guess we'll call this, bring this to a close. Thanks for joining online. Hopefully it worked out okay for you to not have to trek down to campus, or over from the engineering portion of campus where you have other classes. Not a regular thing I'll do even when it's cold, but today it's really, really stinking cold. So we'll go from there. Oh, thank you. I have a lot of weird toys on my bookshelves. A lot of little knickknacks. So there you go. Thank you for that. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I can hang around for a minute here if you have other questions. But other than that, good luck. Email me if you have other questions, and we'll kind of go from there. Relax. realize there's a lot of glare on my head from this overhead light. It's not very flattering. Okay. No, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's part of the job. And yeah, good luck on the exam. We'll see you on Wednesday. It'll be fun for me, maybe not for you. It'll be fine. You're all going to do okay. I believe that in my heart of hearts. Okay, well. My laptop will back over here. All right, that looks like that's it. So I'm gonna turn the live stream off then.